Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of Liquidware Chats. In this episode, I talked to James Graham, who's the field CTO for EMEA for Remo 3. We start with looking at James' background and how he got into EUC. We then talk a bit about what Remo 3 do. And then, in case you missed it, Liquidware and Remo 3 made an announcement around our integration, and we talk a bit in detail about that integration. You can find out more information in the description below. And then we finish, as usual, with a look at the impact of AI in EUC. Really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks very much.
Hey James, how you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you. Really good to be here on Liquid
Great. Yeah,
Chat.
no, we're delighted to have you on here. I can see from your background, like myself, you're big into your Star Wars. I'm glad to see they're the original posters because episodes one to three don't exist in my universe.
I did enjoy them, but actually these are quite cool because this one is signed by Kenny Baker.
I should know who that is. That is C3PO?
Close.
R2?
Yes.
Ah, very good.
And then I've got these, so you can't see Return of the Jedi. It's slightly out of, you can probably see the corner actually in my camera, but they are both signed by Dave Prowse,
Ah, Darth Vader himself.
Darth Vader
The
himself,
original Darth Vader.
the original man who was not allowed to speak, but yes.
Well, yeah,
Well,
but there's good reasons for that. Nobody needs to hear his accent. James Earl Jones was way better than that.
well, no, you did hear his voice in Return of the Jedi, didn't you, when he took his mask off to speak
Yes,
at the end?
yes, yeah. Cool. Well, it's good to know we have something in common that we're both Star Wars buffs. It's out of sight over there, but I have a Scout Walker and a Rebel Transport Carrier, the originals.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
left
that,
over from my childhood. Most of my Star Wars stuff to disappear or got broken or something like that, but I managed to hold on to those two. So I'm very happy to have them in my office. And then yeah.
yeah.
So James, you, as we said, are the EMEA field CTO at Remo 3. So how did you come to be in the world of EUC? Um, what's your background?
So I've been around for quite a while, I would say. So I finished. It was interesting, really, because I didn't really mean to fall into this space. I don't know if that probably applies to many of us that actually ended up here, but
I
I
have a degree in environmental science, James. So
mine's a little bit closer to the nose. So I did my degree in computing mathematics, but I did a sandwich year as well. So I did a sandwich year for, it was actually Capgemini at the time years ago, but as a dev. So I was
okay.
with them on the British Steel contract. It was British Steel actually at the time before it went over to Tata Steel. I think it's with Tata now, but so I was wanting to be a dev, right? And then I finished my degree and I foolishly put all of my eggs in one basket. I was like, right, I'm going to get into the Capgemini grad program. And, just that was going to be my career
Mhm.
sorted. But unfortunately, it was around the time of economic downturn back in, yeah, it was closer, just around the millennium time, so probably 2001 time. And they basically stopped recruiting for grad. So I was just like, oh no, I've got nowhere to go, basically. So I ended up speaking to one of my lecturers, and he just said, I'm looking for a PhD candidate. And so I was like, okay, I got nothing better to do. And so I ended up staying on for another 3 years or so doing
Yeah.
PhD. So then I come out of university after eight
Hence
years.
why you are Dr. James Graham.
That is why I am Dr. James Graham, yes. And I get there and I'm like, okay, so I need a job now. I've got this PhD. I was like, right, I'm top of the world. I'm doctor. Surely everyone's going to open all their doors for me, and I'll get the high paid job with pretty much no experience in the industry. And surprise, surprise, it was pretty brutal out there. And I was at this point where I was too experienced to get into a graduate program. But I also, on the flip side, I didn't have enough experience to get a proper normal job. So I really struggled to find work as a developer. And so, as you do, I fell into contracting to keep the money coming in. And that is just how I fell into, I suppose, the EUC space, because I was contracting for a company called SEC, and I was there as part of just doing the Windows rollout work. So there was loads of Windows 7, actually back in Windows XP deployments back for big companies. So they're just rolling out that, and then that shifted to Windows 7 and so on and so forth. So took on a full-time role there, went into like the whole consultancy, solutions architecture, and really that's just how I fell into the EU space, really. Just all things around EUC was my passion and what I got the most enjoyment out of. And fortunately then I started to get closer and closer to Microsoft as well. And that's really then when I joined Microsoft back in 2017 as a Mon Desktop TSP. So helping financial services customers understand the benefits of, I suppose, moving to modern management. So talking around all things Intune back then. And that was some pretty tough conversations with large financial institutes around helping them move from, traditional domain joined SCCM environments to like, hey, look at this cool thing like Windows Autopilot, or look at this cool thing of Intune. And I was probably laughed at quite a few times back then. It was still relatively new. Different conversations now, of course, but yeah, and I got to see the birth of AVD at Microsoft, which is really exciting. Of course, WVD at the time, when it was really in the early days of sort of private preview, private little secret conversations with customers, showing them some of the features that were coming. And of course, it's really matured quite rapidly. And of course, the birth of Windows 365 as well was really exciting. And so 5.5 years at Microsoft, amazing period in my career. Learned so much, but during sort of the last sort of 12 months, I discovered this little company called Remo Free that was bouncing around, and it was really answering the problem. So Microsoft had this problem, right, with Windows applications. So if you've heard it yourself around the Windows compatibility message around 99.7% compatibility, which is great in many scenarios, but really the complex enterprise customers, it's not a reflection on the reality that they have to deal with. And Microsoft offers some great things around Aperture and some other things to help customers with their applications. But really, when I was looking at that challenge of helping customers from SCCM to Intune, there wasn't really an answer from Microsoft. And Remo Free were a company that sort of came on my radar as offering that capability to customers. And that's really where I started to work quite closely with them around introducing them to the wider services partner community, to help sort of fill those gaps and help customers with those challenges. And I just got to know them really well and enjoyed working with the team, and came to a point where, hey, let's just have a go. Let's move from like the big Microsoft massive company to working as a small startup. And
how have you found that transition? Has it been very different?
It's been extremely different. Like some of my key takeaways, it's like there's nowhere to hide at a small startup, really. And that doesn't mean like at Microsoft you can hide, but really there's a lot of people doing things, and you tread on a lot of toes when you try to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But at a startup, really every single thing you do has impact on that business. And that's an amazing thing, because you just see something that needs doing, and you just do it really. And I think I love that sort of startup mentality of everyone all sort of pushing or going in the same direction together and just getting stuff done.
Yeah, I suppose Liquidware, while not a startup, I think has that kind of same mentality. And we actually touched on this at our kickoff that, we all need to be rowing in the same direction with the one goal type thing. And we are small, so we can be quite, we're not tiny, but we're small enough that we can be agile in what we do and we can change. And it's like, there's not the level of bureaucracy you see at somewhere like, obviously there's advantages to Microsoft, but obviously there's levels of bureaucracy and stuff that you wouldn't see at smaller type companies. So I suppose that's one of the big key advantages of being in this kind of smaller ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of my favorite things as well, which you've just sort of triggered in my brain, is being able to influence product direction based
Yeah.
on customer feedback and your own personal feedback as well. I think at the very large companies, that's really hard to do. You need to gather a lot of customer evidence. You need to really be able to articulate the impact of that change. And you're competing with many other people with that same type of different type of feedback and different reasons and justifications to try and get could be a very small, tiny change made, but where you're in a more agile company that's more flexible to be able to make those changes on the fly, I think you can really help influence and shape the product. That's probably been one of my favorite things about my time at Remo 3.
Very good. So you touched on a little bit about what Remo 3. So can you expand on that about, what you mentioned about this whole kind of migration of applications. So can you expand a little bit on what you guys do at Remo 3?
Yeah, so probably there's quite a few areas that we touch these days, but it boils down to really around helping customers around their Windows applications. And for us, really, it's about like really revolutionizing the application lifecycle management processes by adding automation into that. So traditionally, whether it's application migration projects or application lifecycle management or just managing change in your environment, fundamentally has come down to manual processes around applications. And that's whether that's application migration, application packaging, application testing, OS change testing, deploying patches, all of the things that can impact your application estate is boiled down to manual effort. So what Remo 3 provides is automation around those activities, around those business processes, around applications. And so really we speak to customers around two areas. Most of those first touch points with customers are around a migration opportunity, really. That's where they find out about Remo 3. So that could be moving from on-prem VDI maybe to look at AVD, for example, moving from a server OS to a multi-session client OS, or looking from SCCM to Intune, or moving from Windows 10 to 11. But ultimately, they need to understand what their application estate will look like against that target environment. What applications are going to fail? Where do I need to remediate? Or do I need to actually understand what I've got, right? I've built up all of this technical debt over the years around my applications. What do I actually have? And so we're able to provide automation to help customers perform full discovery of their applications, automate the migration of SCCM to Intune, for example, help customers understand their applications, validation against a change, a move to Windows 11, for example, or a move from single session to multi-session, or server OS to multi-session, all of those great things. And also, many customers are looking to modernize that app estate as well, and that could be a move to MSIX, for example, or VMware App Vols, and of course, Flex App One as a great example as well.
You brought us seamlessly to that. So obviously what we just what day are we today? We are recording this on Valentine's Day. There is some love, some partnership between Remo 3 and Liquidware. That's why I am wearing a Remo 3 t-shirt, because we have been working on for quite a while an integration between Flex App 1 and Remo 3. So it's very exciting for both of us that, there's been a lot of effort from both teams. So lots of people have been involved in the process, and it's great that we're finally at the stage where Remo 3 can take in Flex App 1 packages and analyze them. So can you tell us a little bit about what the process is once you import a Flex App package into Remo 3?
Yeah, and I think it's initially by saying like hats off to our dev team for going through the process of getting this working. It's been a long road, and it's really good to be finally here and talking about this capability. And I really look forward to what comes next. But initially, yes, so we can now customers with existing Flex App One applications, we can now onboard those packages to Remo 3. And part of our onboarding process, really exciting, we're able to fully analyze, sort of dynamically analyze those applications. So we go through this onboarding process of importing the application, and then we're able to perform sort of automated discovery of those applications. And we do this against customers' customized OS build, which is the most important thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't want to do it just against a generic application. That's no use. It has to be within the constraints that the customer has placed.
That's it, exactly, because that provides us with the contextual relevance into the customer's environment.
Sure.
That's really the key thing about Remo 3 is we're not just statically analyzing customers' applications. We're actually doing automated testing and discovery of their applications within sort of their environment, so their customized image, to give us that sort of known good full sort of DNA of an application. So that first stage is discovery. So that is essentially us automating the provisioning of a virtual machine. That virtual machine is provisioned with the customer's current OS build, and then we go ahead and we automate the installation of the application. So we're able to install that Flex App package, and then essentially with our discovery capability, we're able to understand that everything that application lays down during the installation process. So therefore, we're able to build this picture of what executables get laid down, what shortcuts get laid down by that application. We're able to understand the metadata of the application, either from the package itself, or if it's coming from a repository like SCCM, for example, we can get that information from there. And from there, then, once we understand what that installation activity looks like, we go on to the next phase is, hey, how do we train the Remo 3 platform to understand how this application runs in the customer's environment? So then we go ahead and we start testing those shortcuts. So we dynamically run that application in the customer's environment to understand, what child processes get spun up, what dialog boxes pop up. So suddenly we're able to build this sort of full picture of a customer's application, including the metadata, including the install behavior, including the running behavior. And it's fantastic now that we support Flex App 1 packages to go through that process to get to a point where we can say, right, this is what known good looks like. We understand how the application performs in your environment, CPU impact, RAM impact, disk impact, network impact. We can capture all of that during our baseline, and we can say, hey, like, where do you want to take this? Where's next for this package?
And then obviously, because it's a Flex App 1 package that supports modern management, so it can just be you pushed via Intune to whatever environment that application is running on, whether it be physical, virtual, AVD, offline, because Flex App 1 has its own offline component to it, so it can run offline. So it just gives you that flexibility, and I suppose it kind of just helps with that whole kind of migration and modernization that lots of companies are going through. Like, we talk about Windows 11, but there's some companies who aren't even on Windows 10. So they've had the extended support on Windows 7 for so long, and now Microsoft say, okay, now guys, seriously. And you think with the end of support for Windows 10 coming that they'd be looking to move to Windows 11, but there is people kind of caught in flux between operating systems.
Yeah, it's definitely hard for those large organizations with a lot of legacy debt around their applications. It's always a big lift for them for those. Even like keeping up to date with Windows has been a challenge for many organizations.
Mm,
It's only just around now that many customers have got that process down and are comfortable with it and are now being said, oh, by the way, now Windows 11 is here and you need to suddenly move to a new OS. And yes, of course, in many ways you could look at it as just being another feature update, but for many organizations, that's certainly not the case from an experience perspective or mentality perspective, or just being burnt in the past by these big changes. It's quite daunting for organizations, so therefore they will go slow. They will, and they'll take their time, and
mm.
they'll be they'll be dragged along there, but they will get there eventually. But it's just a slow and painful process.
Yeah, and I just think you know, having something like being able to take your Flex app ones, analyze them with Remo 3, it just obviously makes that process that little bit easier going forward when you're looking to migrate to another platform. And the whole point of doing these partnerships is we are trying to make it more seamless for our customers, because there is so much complexity in EUC, and with yourselves and the likes of our joint partnerships with Nerdio, we're trying to make this, if you are looking to, say you're on an existing VDI platform and you want to move to AVD, well then we can assist as well, because the three of us all play nicely together in that ecosystem. And that is the whole point of doing these partnerships, is to make it easier for our customers, our joint customers, across the board, because and it's just essentially remove complexity.
Yeah, definitely removing that friction, right? That's what it's all about.
Exactly. That's the word. We're removing friction, giving them back time. And you can talk about cost savings, but at the end of the day, time and reducing friction are far more important.
Definitely, indeed, and of course they will have a positive impact on cost reduction in themselves. Really,
Absolutely. And this is
yeah.
only just phase one of what we're doing together. We can't talk about it at the moment, but there is more to come from this integration, and we're really looking forward to going to market together, and lots of joint kind of materials. If you go to the Remo 3 website, you can see there's a solutions brief. So we'll put the details below in the episode description. So just to finish up, James. One of the questions I ask pretty much every guest is, what is your view on the impact of AI in EUC? And maybe being a bit more specific, how do you see AI being implemented into Remo 3? And you can be as vague as you want. I'm sure there's things you can't talk about. But I'm happy to get your general view as well, and maybe just like, areas where you think it may help with companies such as Remo 3.
Yeah, so it's interesting really because I like I my other half, I'm trying to say this in the right way. So my other half, she works for Microsoft, and so she is heavily involved in the Copilot stuff at Microsoft. So I'm pretty much hearing it day on, day out, all the time. So
Do you use Copilot?
well, she does, definitely. She has, and talks about it a lot. So I certainly use the free version that
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
all have
yeah.
access to, whether that's in the Edge browser or as part of Windows 11. And I've definitely used it to accelerate. I suppose if I'm looking at writing a blog and I need to reword stuff, or if I'm doing a
Yeah.
LinkedIn post, I'll have it review my text, or if I'm sending an email that I really want to land correctly, I will have Copilot review that text. So I think from a productivity perspective, it's almost great having that almost that second set of eyes that you can
Mm.
rely on to just take something that you can knock it very quickly, or even just give it a few sentences and say, hey, look, I'm trying to write to this person. This is what I'm going to write to them about. Can you help me knock something up? And in fact, actually, a real example is we're looking at doing this customer events in a few weeks' time, and I was like, okay, so these are the technologies that we're talking about. This is the target audience that we are speaking to or trying to invite or trying to get excited about this event. This is the venue, this is the date, and this is the time. Can you knock up an email that will attract attention to these folks? And yeah, then went ahead and produced this pretty cool email actually around getting people excited. So I think when we look about how AI is revolutionizing EUC or the industry, like productivity improvements is certainly one of those key areas that I see it impacting.
Mm.
Will that have an impact on people's jobs? I think so over time. I think it's hard to tell at the moment, but definitely it could certainly impact administration staff or folks that do like a heavily admin tasked people. So
Yeah.
improve productivity, but maybe also reduce the requirement on people as well. So yeah, I see a big movement in that area definitely over the next few years. We'll see if it turns out to be a flash in the pan or a bit of a novelty and it doesn't really take on, because without, like, I think what you really need is strong adoption change management really to change the way people work. And if that doesn't come to support this revolution, then it will just die out as any other sort of novelty in an industry comes, really. So that's
Doesn't feel like it's going to die out. It just seems like, I don't know if you heard, but Sam Altman is apparently looking for $7 trillion. Like, it's mind blowing amounts of money to for OpenAI. Like, that's the GDP of half the world or something. It's those are figures that are just, and it seems that the evolution and we're getting a new AI on a daily basis. And or there's been enhancements. Obviously we now have we have Microsoft Copilot, we have Google Gemini, we have OpenAI ChatGPT, and we have Perplexity. There's those just four that I know off the top of my head, but it's about another 300 on top of that. So it does seem like, we've been through the various different waves, and now I know we are most definitely in a hype cycle at the moment. And going back to your point there, is that what it is? Is this just hype? And I personally think we're probably going to see a bit of a baseline occurring, and we mightn't see as much development for a while, and then it'll probably take off again. But at the moment, it seems like we're in the upward part of a hype cycle. So yeah, I agree on the productivity stuff. I also think, areas around monitoring and stuff and being able to analyze, probably similar to, potentially in the Remo 3 platform, analyze so much data, you produce so much data and provide analysis on that. I kind of see that kind of deep analysis that you can just set the AI on it. Now, whether you want to use one of these open ones or whether you want to then look at a private AI because you don't want your company data to be analyzed. And I suppose that's where the one of the advantages of Copilot is it's based on your tenant, and you can say it doesn't. Whereas ChatGPT, it's open source, that kind of thing. So there is a kind of there's definitely, I think, there's a lot more to happen on the security privacy side of these things going forward, but I think it's quite exciting. But at the same time, I gave a presentation at last year in London. I think you were actually there. And I started with a slide of, T1000 because Skynet and T1000 is what AI was when I was a child. So uh, I don't want it to get to that phase. Clippy 2.0, I'm good with for the moment. So
But yeah, because well, you talk about interesting point because yeah, about the ethics around AI is super important, and I think that's where we need to be careful around the open sourceness of the way. Like I think that's where like the AI stuff is really catching on because of the way it's being done. It's being done from an open source perspective, so folks can build their own
yeah.
types of AI solutions on top of this technology, which is fantastic. But we also need to be very careful with that as well, because of course, yeah, people with that flexibility and freedom, there are always risks associated with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think as a way of enhancing IT and EUC, I think it's quite an exciting time. So yeah, I think, but there's lots more to come from AI and how it can help improve. Because I think if you look at things like potentially development, how it could help with development and speeding up, for smaller companies like ourselves, speeding up those development cycles, because you can then compete against the bigger companies because you've got this AI that can speed up your process, so you can do 4 releases a year, or whatever, or like a mobile app doing it once a month or something like that. So I think there is potential advantages for companies in the UC space. Oh,
Yeah.
I see someone's joined us.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is yeah, Casanova just coming in.
Very good, very good.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah, from an EUC application perspective, being able to understand security vulnerabilities and trends, like what causes an application to failure, to
Yeah,
fail, what impact does an application have on an OS, for example? What are all the different touch points, and therefore, what are those different touch points that could cause a potential failure? Those things are really exciting and interesting, and AI can massively decrease that sort of development time from
yeah.
understanding data, cleaning the data, building a machine learning model, and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, from that perspective, yeah, it's really exciting, and that's
Will
potentially
we finally solve the application issue?
that's never going to happen.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
The AI will go, what? No. Why is this 20-year-old up? No, stop now.
Why did you do
Seriously.
this?
Yeah,
Why?
yeah. Well, we can
Why?
break the AI with some of the applications out there. As someone said, the what will be left in the end will be cockroaches and legacy Windows applications.
There you go. What a great place to be.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to end. So, James, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm really excited about the partnership between Liquidware and Remo 3, and the fact that it's not just a partnership on paper anymore. We have an actual integration that works and adds value to our customers. So I think it's really exciting. So as I said, check out all the details on the Liquidware site and the Remo 3 site. I'm going to put the details in the description for the podcast. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you. Catch you on the next one when we talk about next phase. Super excited.